So here's what I've learned. Don't let fear become the creator of your reality. Yes, it is so easy to say, sitting from a space where I feel safe in my home and everything else and blah, blah, blah. I want people to really start recognizing their spiritual energy that is attached to emotion. When you understand that spiritual energy is simply the outside world trying to communicate to you, we are antenna, we are spiritual beings, we are meant to receive messages. We're not always going to know how to interpret them, which is why our emotional state of being has to be a place that we are allowing to create without it being stuck in fear. Fear is not something that has to be innately bad. Fear is an indicator that something is not right. That's why we have to know how to trust it. Think of a cave. You can walk up into a cave that's completely dark. It is unknown to you. You've never experienced it. You're never going to know what's in there unless you go. It can be the last day on this earth, or it can be the most amazing experience you've ever had. That is a choice of having a free will decision to just say, I'm going to have a leap of faith. But also, if you are an expert hiker or an expert outdoors person and you understand that based on that type of cave and based on this angle and this and that, that's probably not the best idea because you might get stuck. That's logic, right? That is where you allow those two worlds to marry together. Because logically, you can come up on a space that looks similar, but if you go in deep enough that you say, I feel safe enough to use the wisdom that I've gained through my physical avatar and experience, then I can walk into that emotional world a lot more confident, which is where the fear goes away. You're still going to be afraid because you don't know what's going to happen. But if you trust your ability to use what you've learned on this earth to walk into spaces with your confidence, then it's much easier to accommodate yourself in situations that you're not used to doing. I have learned that in my own space of emotional doing, I have not allowed myself the space to physically apply it to life, right? It is really easy to talk about what we feel and talk about what we think. But when we actually go and make it applicable in the physical world, it changes you, it changes things, and your outlook has to become dualistic. Polarity comes from a place of only emotionally doing what you want based on how you've been taught to act, and the things that you get back from the receptors you learn as a kid on how to receive. What does that look like? Kids can't speak right away. So they learn how to ooh, right? All that until they get the attention of the parent. And then they'll throw a little behavior in there to see what happens. Maybe a tantrum, maybe a little laugh, maybe a little giggle. And whichever one the parent is more receptive to, the kid takes on that trait and it becomes imprinted. This is why I say babies are little manipulators. Love them, but that's what animals do too. That's what domestication is. It's learning how to you set these emotional rules out here, these logical rules of this is what structure is to keep you safe, right? Let's just say in a perfect world, these are the things that will keep you safe with no malice or anyone else trying to control you. Just don't put your hand on the stove. Don't walk in front of a bus. Things like that, right? Then the baby has to learn the emotional state of how far can I take that though, right? We all have this space in us, what we call spiritual energy, our spirit, where it wants to try new things. And based on your spirit, it's going to jump head in first, or it's going to be really hesitant and put a toe in first, right? You have to know your energies. So that's why I say fear is just like they say beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So is fear. Fear is in the beholder of the person who's experiencing it. So the way that you give yourself confidence, the way that you experience your understanding of what you're going through, then it's much easier to say what fear is versus someone telling you to be fearful of something that they've never tried. And because they've never tried it, you shouldn't try it. That's ridiculous, right? That's hogwash. I have taught myself and I've done this by watching others. Here's the thing about me. I'm not this amazing person who thinks they're so smart because they know stuff. I watch the world experience itself. We watch the world experience itself through social media, through our type of content and media that we consume. And then when we do that, we're taking on someone else's thoughts. Remember, some other human being sat down and designed this, produced this, wrote this, created this, which takes us into a world that they created. And then the characters and the happenstance that happens are the emotions that they're trying to describe through personalities, right? Personalities are simply avatars of our emotions. And then that's why some people say, that's who I am, that's who I feel, that's who I agree with. And you start living living that timeline. But that's why I say be careful, because that timeline could belong to someone else, and it can be laced and doused in fear, and you're walking into it saying this is your timeline, when really you were just following that looks and the acts of an avatar that you feel resembles your emotional state of being. Recognize that you have to know what you want for you. This is when I talk about masculine and feminine energy. Remember, we can be masculine presenting. Yes, there are males and there are females. That's that is that separately. Energetically within those males and females, because we all are either male or female or in between, we still have emotional souls and worlds in our minds that are happening that has to still be played out in this physical world that we all call Earth, right? So, because we all live in these little realities, we have to know, am I my masculine in this world or am I my feminine in this world? It doesn't have to do with the outside. That is up to you how you want the outside to look. But the inside has to know, which one do I lead with so that I can allow it to lead without me hindering it, right? If you are more nurturing and loving and kind and more docile in your energy, that's more feminine. And that can be any gender. But that means if you are that, then you're going to have to work on your masculine energy and knowing how to step in, step up, speak up when necessary, and stop waiting for someone else to do it, right? Because we can't get mad at the world waiting for others to do it if we know we have the answer. That's why you always have that whole like the geek and the dork, right? Or the geek and the jock, because it's like, oh well, I'm muscle and brawn, and this one's like, oh well, I'm brain and all of this. It's like, but they always try to make the one who's a brainiac scrawny and this and that and that. Like, they can either be both. You can have a masculine who's tiny and scrawny and a big old softy who ain't ever gonna fight nobody. But they're smart and they can get you through it. That's why I tell people, don't let the frame fool you. You have to know who you are so that you can step into this world and create something that no one else has seen before. Energetically, that's what it's about. The universe already knows what the hard, callous masculine is and the overflowing, overgiving, watery feminine is. And then we've learned how to go into the middle and diverge them so that they work together, to bridge them together. This makes more solidity. This makes it more solid, right? This is how we get to things that we want. We take something really hard, we mix with something really soft like water, break it down, mix it up, and then we let it re-solidify, or we have to cure it or cook it or whatever we do, whatever process we choose to use to make it a solid or a malleable thing that we can work with. That is how energy is meant to be used. So when you use your masculine and feminine energy, then you're able to confront fears much easier with confidence and not just doing it from a place of, well, this is how I was taught, or this is what somebody told me fear is, and I can't go past that boundary. I'll never know, but that's what they told me. Don't do that to yourself, because then we get stuck in these places of believing others' realities more than our own. Each of us is a creator of our own reality. I'm not saying anything that's new that anyone hasn't realized. Again, our families teach us what they want, but we as adults, at some point, we keep pursuing something that we decide we want to do, or something we've been conditioned to decide we want to do. That choice is up to you. Just recognize that the path you're on are decisions you're making based on what you want, and not the fear that was curated by somebody else's lack or inability to go beyond their own boundaries. Of course, use your logic with your emotions to make practical choices that will keep you safe. To me, practicality means I know that that's what works for you, and I know that that seems that that's going to work, but I'm not going to do it because I don't feel safe. And that's okay. Practically, that works well for me. And then that's where my logic and my emotions feel safe, because now they trust me. But if I put myself in situations that my emotions don't trust, but logically the world says trust it, and I go walk onto this elevator or onto this thing and I plummet down, well, yeah, now my emotions and my spiritual space don't trust my logic anymore. This is where we have these conflicts, and this is where fear and anxiety is created, at least in my experience. So what I've learned to focus on is, if I see fear is trying to create a narrative that I've never experienced, then I say, well, let's create another dual experience that's positive. This is where people say, well, how do you stay so positive? Because when I see that both outlooks are possible, why not focus on the one that's going to make me feel good in the meantime? Even if it doesn't happen, that's okay, because that builds resilience and that builds wisdom. And that's how you get to the point of confidence where nothing can phase you. Water off a duck's back. All right? Love ya.